Hello and welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to practice your English listening skills. That's right, I'm going to tell you a story and I want you to listen along and see how much you understand. My name is Michael. I'm the founder of English at the Ready, and it's my goal to make you fluent in English. If you want to become fluent in English as well, make sure to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Now, a couple weeks ago, I filmed a similar video where I told you a bit more about myself. If you haven't yet watched that video, you can find it on my channel. It got a lot of positive feedback, so I think this is a format that you guys enjoy, which is why I've decided to film another podcast-style listening video. And today, I'm going to tell you about the time I hiked an active volcano. Believe it or not, you can hike active volcanoes, not just mountains, but volcanoes. You have to do it from a safe distance, but it's an amazing experience, and I want to tell you a bit more about that today. 2 years ago, I was in Italy. I love Italy. I think Italy is a beautiful country, lots of amazing history, food, culture, art. If you're from Italy, let me know in the comments. If you've ever been to Italy, let me know. But I was in Naples. And Naples is a town on the Mediterranean Sea. If you've ever been to Naples, you probably know that the food there is amazing. The pizza is what Naples is known for. Now, I was in Naples and it had always been a dream of mine to visit the island of Stromboli. Stromboli is an island in the Mediterranean and it's a volcanic island. The volcano is still active and it's been active for the last 2,000 years. Believe it or not, the ancient Romans used it as a lighthouse because it was always erupting, it was always there, and you could rely on it when you were navigating in the dark. I had always been fascinated by the island of Stromboli, and I was in Naples, so I thought, what a perfect time to go visit and to finally make this dream come true. So I went alone, and I boarded a ferry at 10 p.m. I still remember boarding that ferry. I was the only foreigner there. It was November, so not a very popular time to travel in Europe, but it was full of Italians, full of locals. I felt really like I was getting an authentic experience boarding that ferry. I remember I had booked a stateroom. If you don't know what a stateroom is, it's basically like a hotel room, but on a ship or a ferry or a boat. So I got to my stateroom. I think I still have some photos of that stateroom. I'll leave them here on the screen. And I went to bed. I remember falling asleep to the sound of the waves. I remember looking out the window and seeing the lights of the coast in the distance. It was truly a unique and magical experience. Now, the ferry was set to arrive the following morning at 6 a.m. Believe it or not, it was an overnight ferry. So it left at around 10 in the evening and it arrived the next day at 6. I knew that Stromboli was visible from the ocean at night, again, because there's a volcano on the island which is in a constant state of eruption. So in the darkness, you can look out and you can see a gold or orange glow in the distance. I really wanted to witness this, so I set my alarm for 4 in the morning. I woke up at 4. I had an okay sleep. It wasn't amazing. If you've ever been on a ship, you know that sometimes it can be a bit bumpy. But I remember waking up at 4. I had nothing but my backpack with me, and I went up to the top deck. On the deck, I was the only one there. There was nobody else there. It was extremely windy. It was humid, and I could smell the salt water in the air. And I looked out in the distance, and finally, I saw Stromboli, the island of Stromboli, and the volcano erupting. You could actually hear it erupt. We were probably 20, 30 kilometers away from the island, and you could hear the booms of the eruption, which happened every 5 or so minutes. I still remember that. It was very unique. I had never seen anything like that before. And as we got closer to the island, I could see the volcano erupting more clearly. We arrived at the very small port in Stromboli on the island at around 6 in the morning. And I remember getting off the ferry and being a bit confused because it was pitch black. It was November. It was quite warm in that part of the Mediterranean. In November, it can still get quite warm. So it wasn't cold, but it was dark. The island of Stromboli is small. It doesn't have so much in the way of tourist infrastructure. So I was trying to navigate through the dark alleyways at 6 in the morning. I had nothing but my backpack and my phone to guide me. And finally, I arrived at the hotel. It wasn't really a hotel, it was more a bed and breakfast. But of course, it was 7 in the morning, 6:45, and there was nobody at the reception. So I arrived at this hotel and I didn't have anybody I could speak to. I was sitting outside in basically this small lobby. There was just a couch and actually a couple cats. One of the things I like the most about the Mediterranean and the islands in Greece and Italy and in Spain are the cats. There are a lot of cats. They're very friendly. They come up to you, they purr, they rub against you. And that's something we don't have where I'm from in Canada. We don't have stray cats running around. So it was just me and a couple of cats watching the sunrise from the lobby of the bed and breakfast. Finally, at around 8, I think I did contact the owner. Probably was asleep when I arrived, but the owner did arrive at 8 and let me into my room. And I decided that I would explore the island a bit. Again, Stromboli is a very small island. There's not so much to see, but I went down to the dock and I found a guide. I found a fisherman who agreed to take me on his boat around the island for, I think it was 40 euros, 50 euros. I can't remember exactly. So he took me around the island. We went on his little boat. He showed me the black sand beaches. The beaches are black because the rock disintegrates and it turns into black stones, small black stones. So that's definitely unique. Most beaches, or the classic beach you think of, is white, has white sand, but on Stromboli the beaches are black because they are volcanic. He took me to a couple villages. I went ashore. One was half abandoned. Of course, there were a lot of cats there as well. And then he took me around to the other side of the island, where looking up, I could actually see the volcano and I could see a plume of smoke. The air smelled a bit like sulfur. If you've ever been near a volcano, you know what I'm talking about. Sulfur smells a bit like rotten eggs. It's a gas and it's not very pleasant, but it definitely added to the experience. He took me around the island and finally to this rock formation in the sea. And I remember he turned off the motor of the boat near the rock formation, and the waves were quite large, so I could feel the swells going up and down. It was quite an interesting experience. There was what looked like a face in the rocks. Eventually, he took me back to the village, and I went back to my hotel and prepared to hike the volcano, because the best time to see the volcano is in the evening. It's when it gets dark, because you can see the orange glow of the lava. At about 6 or 7 p.m., I remember meeting a guide in the city center. Well, it wasn't really a city, in the town center. And we went up together. We hiked up the volcano. There was a path. It probably took about an hour to get up the mountain. He took us to a spot which was a safe distance from the crater. The sun was setting, and I remember standing there looking behind me at the ocean, or rather the Mediterranean Sea. There was the most beautiful sunset. I could see the distant lights of the mainland. I could see boats. And on the other side of me, I could see this massive crater. And of course, as it got darker, I could see the lava. The lava was spewing out of the crater at regular intervals. This volcano had been erupting for 2,000 years non-stop. And I remember my guide told me that a few years ago you would have been able to hike higher, but there was a sudden eruption and unfortunately a couple hikers lost their lives. So since that incident, you could only watch the eruption from a lower elevation. We stood there for about 30 minutes taking in the eruptions, and every 5 minutes or so there was a bigger one. So they would come in cycles. There would be a big one, then it would be relatively flat for a few minutes, and then there would be another big one. And every time one of the big eruptions happened, I remember you could hear a very loud boom. When I eventually made it back to my hotel, I found it a bit difficult to fall asleep at first because every few minutes there was a loud boom. You could hear this boom all over the island, but eventually I got used to it and I was able to sleep. Stromboli is truly a unique place. I remember it felt almost tropical. It was November, there weren't that many tourists at all, and I could hike up an active volcano and watch it erupt at night. I know it sounds quite dangerous, but it wasn't nearly as dangerous as it sounds because there's actually a warning system. Seismologists, by the way, seismology is the study of the earth, earthquakes, tectonic plates, volcanoes, and a seismologist is somebody who studies seismology. But seismologists constantly monitor the volcano, and they can generally predict when a big eruption is going to happen, so they can tell people to evacuate. And there is a system of sirens and early warning alerts. I spent 2 nights on that island, and I still remember it very fondly. If you're ever in the area and you're looking for a bit of an adventure, go to Stromboli. Visiting Stromboli was one of the most unique experiences I've ever had. Let me know in the comments, have you ever hiked an active volcano? What's the most adventurous thing you've done? I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you could understand most of what I was saying, and I really appreciate your support. So if you want to improve your English, make sure to subscribe to English at the Ready here on YouTube, leave a like, and if you want to study with me in my online programs, click the link in the description below to learn more. I'll see you in the next video.